Sometimes the biggest mistake of your life is not what you did. It is what you believed without ever asking for the truth. Ryan Carter had no idea that an ordinary Saturday morning was about to reopen a chapter he thought had ended forever. The park was crowded with families enjoying the first warm weekend of spring. Children ran across the grass chasing soccer balls while parents sat beneath maple trees with coffee cups and folding chairs. A light breeze carried the smell of freshly cut grass through the air. Ryan walked slowly along the paved path that circled the playground. At 34, he had everything he once thought would make him happy. A successful career. A downtown apartment overlooking the Chicago River. Financial security. Freedom. Yet every evening his home felt a little too quiet. 2 years had passed since his divorce from Emily. 2 years since the arguments, the accusations, and the day he convinced himself she had betrayed him. He rarely allowed himself to think about her anymore. At least that was what he told himself. As Ryan passed the playground, something caught his attention. A little boy stood near the climbing structure, holding a small red toy truck. He looked no older than 2 years old. Nothing unusual about that. Hundreds of children played there every weekend. Yet Ryan stopped walking. The boy's profile looked strangely familiar. Ryan frowned. The child turned slightly, sunlight falling across his face. Ryan felt a strange sensation settle in his chest. The shape of the boy's eyes. The curve of his smile. Even the way he tilted his head while studying the toy truck. It felt like looking at an old photograph. Ryan remained where he was. The little boy laughed as another child ran past him. The sound drifted across the playground. Nearby parents smiled without paying much attention. Ryan could not look away. He remembered a picture his mother kept in a family album. A photograph taken when he was almost the exact same age. The resemblance felt impossible. The boy bent down to pick up his truck after dropping it in the grass. As he stood again, Ryan noticed the same sandy blonde hair he had seen every morning in the mirror growing up. The same dimple that appeared when he smiled. Ryan shook his head slightly. It was ridiculous. Coincidences happened all the time. Yet his feet refused to move. Minutes passed. Then the little boy suddenly looked toward him. Their eyes met for only a second. The child smiled politely before turning away again. Ryan felt his heartbeat quicken. He could not explain why. He only knew one thing. For the first time in 2 years, something about the past was standing directly in front of him, and he had a feeling his life was about to change in a way he never saw coming. Ryan told himself he was being ridiculous. Children resembled strangers every day. A similar smile did not mean anything. The same hair color did not mean anything. Yet as he continued standing near the playground fence, he found himself watching the little boy again. The child sat in the sandbox now, carefully pushing his red truck through a small tunnel he had built with a plastic shovel. Other children rushed around him, laughing and shouting, but he seemed completely focused on his tiny construction project. Ryan could not explain why he felt pulled toward him. It was not only the resemblance. It was something deeper. Familiar. Uncomfortable. Almost personal. He finally sat on a nearby bench, pretending to check messages on his phone while keeping the playground within view. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. The little boy remained there, completely unaware that a stranger was studying every expression on his face. At one point the truck became stuck in the sand. The child frowned and crossed his arms. Ryan blinked. He remembered seeing photographs of himself doing that exact thing as a kid. His mother used to joke that nobody could recognize when Ryan was frustrated because he wore the same expression from age 2 onward. The memory surfaced so suddenly that it made him sit up straighter. A moment later, the little boy solved the problem himself and smiled proudly. The dimple appeared again. Ryan looked away. His chest felt strangely tight. Nearby, an elderly man feeding pigeons noticed him staring toward the playground. "Grandson?" the man asked casually. Ryan almost laughed. No. The man smiled. Looks like somebody important. Ryan did not answer. Because somehow that felt closer to the truth. The little boy eventually climbed down from the sandbox and wandered toward a row of swings. As he ran across the grass, Ryan noticed something else. The child's gait. The slight bounce in each step. It was another detail that felt oddly familiar. Small. Insignificant. Yet impossible to ignore once he saw it. Ryan leaned forward on the bench. 2 years ago, he would have dismissed all of this immediately. Back then his life felt simple. Emily had betrayed him. Their marriage had ended. The story was finished. At least that was what he believed. But now, watching this child move across the park beneath the bright spring sun, certainty felt less solid than it once had. The boy reached the swings and looked around as though searching for someone. Ryan followed his gaze. Whoever had brought him to the park was not visible yet. The child waited patiently, clutching the chains of an empty swing. Then his face suddenly lit up. He spotted someone approaching from the far side of the park. Ryan turned instinctively to see who it was. At first he noticed only a woman pushing a stroller along the walking path. Then the sunlight shifted. The woman stepped into clear view. Ryan's breath caught instantly. He knew that face. Even after 2 years, he would have recognized it anywhere. Ryan stood from the bench so quickly that he almost dropped his phone. The woman walking toward the playground was Emily. There was no doubt about it. 2 years had passed since he last saw her in person, yet he recognized her instantly. Her blonde hair was slightly longer now. Her face looked softer somehow, though perhaps that came from the sunlight. She wore a simple sweater, comfortable jeans, and pushed a stroller with one hand while carrying a small tote bag with the other. She looked different from the woman he remembered. Not happier. Not sadder. Just changed. Like someone who had continued living after a chapter closed. Ryan remained frozen as Emily approached the swings. The little boy immediately spotted her and ran across the grass. "Mommy," he called. Emily smiled. The kind of smile Ryan had not seen in years. Genuine. Effortless. She crouched down and opened her arms. The little boy hugged her tightly before excitedly showing her the red toy truck. Ryan watched the interaction from a distance. Something about it felt surreal. Emily listened carefully as the child explained whatever adventure had taken place in the sandbox. She nodded dramatically and laughed at exactly the right moments. The little boy laughed too. Ryan felt an unfamiliar ache settle inside his chest. Then Emily looked up. Their eyes met across the playground. For 1 second, neither moved. The smile disappeared from her face. Not out of fear. Not out of anger. More like surprise. Ryan saw her blink twice as though confirming what she was seeing. The little boy continued talking beside her, unaware of the sudden silence between the adults. Emily slowly stood. The spring breeze moved through the trees overhead. Around them, children played and parents chatted, completely unaware that 2 lives had just collided again. Ryan started walking toward her before he could talk himself out of it. Every step felt heavier than the last. 2 years ago, he had believed he knew everything. He believed Emily had betrayed him. He believed their divorce was unavoidable. He believed walking away was the right decision. Looking at her now, certainty no longer felt so certain. As he got closer, the little boy turned and looked up at him. The resemblance struck Ryan even harder from only a few feet away. The same eyes. The same nose. The same dimple waiting beneath the surface whenever he smiled. Ryan's pulse quickened. Emily noticed where he was looking. For the briefest moment, something changed in her expression. A flash of concern. A flash of realization. Then it disappeared. "Ryan," she said quietly. Hearing his name in her voice after 2 years felt strange. Familiar. Painful. Human. Ryan glanced from Emily to the little boy and back again. Questions filled his mind, but none of them would come out. Because standing there beneath the spring sunlight, staring at a child who looked more like him with every passing second, Ryan began to feel something he had not felt since the day their marriage ended. Doubt. Emily looked down at the little boy before placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Lucas, why do not you go try the slide again?" she said softly. The child nodded immediately and ran back toward the playground, his red truck bouncing in his hand. Ryan watched him go. Every step seemed to deepen the questions forming in his mind. For several seconds neither adult spoke. The noise of the playground filled the silence between them. Children laughed. Parents called out reminders. A dog barked somewhere near the walking trail. Ordinary sounds. Ordinary moments. Yet Ryan felt as though the ground beneath him had shifted. Emily glanced toward Lucas to make sure he was safe before looking back at Ryan. "I did not expect to see you here," she said. Ryan nodded slowly. "Neither did I." His voice sounded distant even to himself. Emily folded her arms lightly. Not defensively. More like someone preparing for a difficult conversation. Ryan noticed how calm she seemed. 2 years ago, every discussion between them felt like a storm waiting to happen. Now there was only distance. Time had smoothed the sharp edges but left the scars underneath. Ryan looked toward Lucas again. The child had reached the slide and was patiently waiting his turn behind 2 other children. "He is your son?" Ryan asked before he could stop himself. Emily's expression changed slightly. Not shock. Not anger. Just caution. "Yes." Ryan swallowed. The answer only made the questions louder. His mind drifted backward. 2 years earlier. The restaurant parking lot. The image that had changed everything. Emily standing beside another man. Laughing. Talking. Looking comfortable. Ryan remembered the anger that followed. The certainty. The accusations. He remembered refusing to listen when Emily tried to explain. At the time he thought he was protecting himself from betrayal. Looking back now, the memory felt different. Less certain. Less clear. Emily followed his gaze toward Lucas. The little boy was smiling again. Ryan felt that strange ache return. He could not explain it. He only knew he had never reacted to a stranger's child this way before. "How old is he?" Ryan asked quietly. Emily hesitated for a moment. Barely a second. Yet Ryan noticed. 2. The answer settled heavily between them. 2 years old. Ryan stared at the grass beneath his feet. 2 years. The same amount of time since the divorce. The same amount of time since he walked away believing the story was over. A cold realization brushed against the edge of his thoughts. Not a conclusion. Not yet. Just a possibility. Small. Terrifying. Impossible to ignore. Across the playground, Lucas laughed as he came down the slide. Ryan looked up instinctively. The sunlight caught the child's face. And once again, it felt like looking into a mirror from the past. Ryan left the park nearly an hour later, but the image of Lucas followed him home. It followed him into the elevator of his apartment building. It followed him through the silence of his living room. It even followed him into the kitchen when he stood staring at a cup of coffee that had gone cold in his hands. The little boy's face refused to leave his mind. By midnight, Ryan found himself sitting at his dining table with old memories spread out around him. A laptop. A few storage boxes. Old photographs he had not touched in years. He opened an album from his childhood. There he was at age 2, standing in his parents' backyard with a toy truck almost identical to the one Lucas carried at the park. Ryan stared at the picture. The resemblance was unsettling. He closed the album and leaned back in his chair. Then another memory surfaced. The memory that had started everything. 2 years earlier. A Thursday evening. Ryan had left work early and stopped at a restaurant near downtown Chicago. Through the window he saw Emily sitting at a table with another man. They were laughing. Comfortable. Familiar. Ryan remembered the sharp pain that hit his chest. He remembered walking inside. He remembered demanding answers before hearing explanations. At the time, every detail seemed obvious. The man was close to her. Emily looked surprised when she saw Ryan. The evidence appeared undeniable. Or so he thought. Ryan opened his laptop and began searching through old emails. Old messages. Old photographs. Anything connected to that period of his life. Hours passed. Around 1 a.m. he found something he had completely forgotten. A social media photo from years earlier. Emily standing beside several relatives at a family barbecue. Ryan looked carefully at the faces. Then he froze. One man stood near Emily with his arm around an older woman. Ryan recognized him immediately. The same man from the restaurant. His stomach tightened. He clicked the photo. Read the comments. Then read them again. One comment from Emily caught his attention. So happy my cousin Jake could finally visit from Denver. Ryan stared at the screen. Cousin. The word seemed impossibly small compared to the damage that followed. He enlarged the image. There was no mistake. It was the same man. The same face. The same person Ryan had convinced himself was her lover. Ryan slowly rubbed his forehead. The apartment felt colder suddenly. 2 years ago Emily had tried to explain. He remembered that now. Not every word. Just fragments. Sentences interrupted by anger. Explanations drowned out by assumptions. At the time he never wanted clarification. He wanted confirmation of what he already believed. Outside his window, city lights reflected across the river. Ryan remained seated at the table long after midnight. For the first time since the divorce, he allowed himself to consider a possibility he had never entertained before. What if the biggest betrayal in his marriage had never happened at all? The following week moved slowly. Every free moment seemed consumed by the same questions. Ryan returned to the old messages he once ignored. He reread conversations he had not opened in years. What surprised him most was not what he found. It was what he failed to see before. Hidden beneath the arguments and accusations were dozens of attempts from Emily to explain herself. Simple messages. Requests to talk. Pleas for patience. At the time, anger had translated every word into guilt. Now those same words felt different. One evening, Ryan sat alone in his apartment with a calendar open on his laptop. The city skyline glowed outside his windows as darkness settled over Chicago. He stared at dates. Numbers. Months. The details he had never bothered calculating before. Lucas was 2 years old. Nearly 28 months, based on what Emily had mentioned at the park. Ryan slowly counted backward. His stomach tightened. Then tightened again. The timeline landed exactly where he feared it would. Lucas had been born only months after the divorce. Ryan stared at the screen. The numbers remained unchanged no matter how many times he checked them. His mind drifted back to the final weeks of their marriage. Emily had seemed exhausted. Emotional. Distracted. At the time, he interpreted everything through suspicion. Every unexplained mood. Every delayed response. Every tear. He had never considered another possibility. Never stopped long enough to ask what she might have been carrying alone. The realization settled heavily over him. The next Saturday morning, Ryan found himself parked across the street from a small community soccer field. Families lined folding chairs along the sidelines while young children chased oversized soccer balls across bright green grass. He felt slightly ridiculous sitting there. Yet he stayed. A few minutes later, Emily arrived with Lucas. The little boy jumped excitedly from the car and immediately ran toward a group of children. Ryan watched quietly from a distance. Lucas laughed often. Tripped occasionally. Got back up every time. The more Ryan observed him, the harder it became to dismiss the resemblance. At one point Lucas scored a goal and raised both arms above his head in celebration. Ryan felt a chill run through him. He used to do the exact same thing. His mother had dozens of photographs proving it. Emily noticed him eventually. This time she did not look surprised. She simply looked tired. Not physically tired. Emotionally. As though she already knew where this road was leading. When practice ended, Lucas ran toward her carrying a juice box. Emily knelt to wipe grass stains from his jeans. Ryan watched the interaction carefully. Then he noticed something sticking out of her tote bag. A medical folder. A birth certificate envelope. Official documents. Emily quickly slid them back inside before walking away. Most people would not have thought twice about it. Ryan did. Because for the first time, the impossible possibility no longer felt impossible. It felt close. Close enough to touch. Close enough to change everything. 3 days later, Emily agreed to meet him. Not because she wanted to revisit the past, but because avoiding the conversation no longer seemed possible. They sat across from each other at a quiet coffee shop a few blocks from the park. Morning sunlight streamed through the windows, casting long shadows across the wooden tables. Ryan arrived early. By the time Emily walked in, his untouched coffee had already gone cold. She sat down without ceremony. No anger. No hostility. Just caution. The kind that comes from learning difficult lessons. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The sounds of steaming espresso machines and quiet conversations filled the space around them. Finally, Ryan looked up. Was Jake really your cousin? Emily stared at him for several seconds. Then she nodded. Yes. The answer was simple. Immediate. Certain. Ryan lowered his eyes. Somewhere deep inside, he had still hoped there was another explanation. Something less devastating than being wrong. Emily folded her hands together on the table. You never asked me that question 2 years ago. Ryan swallowed hard. She was right. He never asked. He assumed. He accused. He judged. But he never asked. The silence stretched between them. Then Ryan spoke the question he had been carrying for weeks. Lucas. His voice caught briefly. How old exactly is he? Emily's expression softened slightly. Not because she was comfortable. Because she knew where this was leading. 28 months. Ryan closed his eyes for a second. The number landed exactly where the calendar calculations had led him. Every timeline matched. Every date aligned. Every explanation he once ignored suddenly made sense. Emily reached into her bag and slowly removed a large envelope. She placed it on the table between them. Ryan looked down. His pulse quickened. The envelope appeared worn at the corners, as though it had been carried for a long time. Emily pushed it toward him. I was going to tell you. Ryan looked up. Her eyes glistened slightly in the morning light. I found out I was pregnant after the divorce papers were finalized. The word settled heavily between them. I tried calling. Ryan felt his chest tighten. I sent messages. Emily's voice remained calm, but every sentence carried years of weight. You changed your number. Ryan remembered. He had done exactly that. Back then he believed he was protecting himself from further pain. Now the memory felt unbearable. Emily nodded toward the envelope. Everything is in there. Slowly, Ryan opened it. Medical records. Dates. Documents. Then one page near the top. A birth certificate. His eyes moved across the paper until they stopped completely. Under the line marked Father, one name appeared. Ryan Carter. The coffee shop disappeared around him. The conversations faded. The sunlight vanished. There was only that single line on a piece of paper and the realization that the little boy at the playground was not someone who looked like him. He was his son. Ryan remained in the coffee shop long after Emily left. The envelope sat open in front of him, its contents spread across the table like pieces of a life he never knew existed. Birth records. Hospital forms. Tiny details documenting moments that should have belonged to him too. Outside, people walked past the window carrying groceries and coffee cups, completely unaware that a man inside was discovering he had missed 28 months of his son's life. That evening, Ryan carried the envelope home and placed it on his dining table. He could not stop looking through it. There were copies of pediatric appointments, daycare enrollment forms, emergency contact information. Every page reminded him of something he had not been there for. Around midnight, he found a small stack of photographs tucked inside one folder. His hands froze. The first picture showed Lucas wrapped in a hospital blanket only hours after birth. Emily looked exhausted but happy. Ryan should have been standing beside her. Instead, there was an empty space where he belonged. The next photograph showed Lucas taking his first steps across a living room carpet. Tiny arms stretched forward. A wide smile on his face. Ryan stared at it for a long time. He wondered who had been cheering behind the camera. It was not him. Another picture showed a first birthday cake. Another showed a trip to a pumpkin patch. Another showed Christmas morning. Ordinary moments. The kind most parents barely remember because they happen naturally. Ryan felt each image like a reminder of time that would never return. The following afternoon, he asked Emily if they could meet again. She agreed, though her hesitation was obvious. This time they sat on a park bench while Lucas played nearby. The little boy raced across the grass chasing bubbles another child had released into the air. Every few seconds he laughed. Ryan listened to that laughter and wondered how many times he had never heard it. "I am sorry," he finally said. Emily remained quiet. "I know that is not enough." She nodded slightly. "No. It is not." Her honesty hurt because it was deserved. Ryan looked toward Lucas. "I missed everything." Emily followed his gaze. The sadness in her eyes appeared only briefly before she hid it again. "Yes." Ryan expected anger, blame, resentment. Instead, Emily sounded tired. Like someone who had already carried this conversation alone for years. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a check. Emily looked at it without touching it. Then she shook her head. "That is not what this is about." Ryan slowly lowered his hand. For a long moment neither spoke. Then Emily looked toward Lucas once more. "If you really want to do something," she said quietly, "stop thinking about what you missed and start thinking about what is left." Ryan followed her gaze. Lucas stood beneath the afternoon sun holding a handful of bubbles that vanished the moment he touched them. For the first time, Ryan understood that no amount of money could buy back the past. The only thing he could offer now was his future. Summer arrived before things began to feel natural. Ryan followed through on the promise he never spoke out loud. He showed up. Not once. Not twice. Every week. Every chance he was given. At first, Lucas treated him like a friendly stranger. Someone nice who appeared at the playground. Someone who pushed him on the swings. Someone who knew how to build impressive block towers and make funny animal sounds. Ryan accepted that. Trust could not be rushed. Some things needed time to grow. Emily watched carefully from a distance. She never interfered, but she never lowered her guard completely either. Ryan understood why. Every missed month of Lucas's life had been caused by his own choices. The burden of proving himself belonged to him alone. One Saturday morning, they met at a small lakeside park north of the city. The sky was bright blue. Sailboats drifted across the water while families spread picnic blankets across the grass. Lucas raced ahead carrying a toy airplane Ryan had given him the week before. Every few minutes he turned around to make sure Ryan was still following. Each time, Ryan smiled and waved. He never fell behind. Later that afternoon, they sat together near the shoreline throwing pebbles into the water. Lucas concentrated intensely before each throw. Most of the stones barely traveled a few feet. Ryan celebrated every attempt as though it were a world record. Lucas laughed so hard that nearby families smiled in response. It was one of those simple moments most parents never think twice about. Ryan noticed every second. Because he understood exactly how close he had come to never having any of them. As the sun began lowering toward the horizon, Emily walked over carrying juice boxes and snacks. Lucas accepted his drink and immediately returned to talking about airplanes, dinosaurs, and every other important topic in a 2-year-old's universe. Ryan listened carefully to every word. Then something happened. Small enough that most people would have missed it. Lucas pointed toward a bird flying overhead. "Look, Dad." The word arrived naturally. Without hesitation. Without announcement. Lucas simply said it because it felt true. Ryan froze. Emily froze too. Neither corrected him. Neither interrupted the moment. Lucas had already moved on to another topic before either adult could react. But Ryan remained perfectly still. For a second, the sounds of the park faded away. The sailboats. The laughter. The breeze coming off the lake. Everything disappeared behind a single word. Dad. Ryan looked toward Emily. She met his eyes briefly. No promises passed between them. No dramatic reconciliation. Some wounds still needed time. Some trust still needed rebuilding. Yet neither of them looked away. Nearby, Lucas launched his toy airplane into the wind and chased after it across the grass. Ryan stood immediately and followed. Not because he was trying to earn forgiveness anymore. Not because he was trying to change the past. He followed because that was where fathers belonged. And this time, he intended to stay.